The ancient origins of biblical stories in Mesopotamia. Over the past 150 years, discoveries in Near Eastern archaeology have reshaped our understanding of the Bible and the culture of ancient Israel. It's now clear that several of Genesis's foundational stories, including the creation of the world and the tale of Noah's Ark, have earlier counterparts in Sumerian, Assyrian, Babylonian, and Canaanite traditions. The similarities between Genesis's flood story and the flood myths from the Eridu Genesis, Atrahasis, and the Epic of Gilgamesh are especially striking, indicating that the biblical writers drew inspiration from Mesopotamia's rich literary heritage. Tracing parallels to the Garden of Eden story, however, has proven more challenging. What ancient sources might have influenced this narrative? Did the writer create the characters of Adam and Eve from scratch, or were they inspired by existing stories? And how did a serpent come to disrupt God's sacred plan in the garden? This documentary explores the origins of these iconic biblical narratives within the culture and literature of ancient Canaan and Mesopotamia. Themes such as the sacred garden, the tree of life, and humanity's creation share well-known roots in the myths of Israel's neighboring civilizations. Old Testament scholars Mario Coppola and Johanna C. de Moore even propose that an obscure Ugaritic text could be the direct predecessor of the story of Adam and the serpent, potentially offering a groundbreaking connection between ancient beliefs and the early stories that shaped the Bible. According to Genesis, Yahweh God created the earth, but there was yet no life. He then caused a flood to water the land and planted a garden in Eden, placing man there to inhabit it. Similarly, the ancient Sumerian myth of Enki and Ninhursag tells of Dilmun, an uninhabited, pristine land. When the goddess Ninhursag requests water, the god Enki causes fresh water springs to flow, making the land livable and bringing forth life. Many scholars believe Dilmun may represent the ancient civilization on the island of Bahrain, yet in myth, it is also envisioned as a mythical, mountainous land in the east where the flood hero would enjoy eternal life. In the Sumerian flood myth, the hero Ziusudra, a parallel to the biblical Noah, is granted eternal life and taken to the eastern mountain of Dilmun, echoing themes of a paradise beyond mortal reach. This motif recurs in the later Epic of Gilgamesh, in which Gilgamesh embarks on a quest to find the land where the flood hero resides, a paradise at the edge of the world. Could this ancient, otherworldly Dilmun have served as a precursor to the biblical Eden? Scholars continue to debate the connections between Dilmun and Eden. While some argue the parallels are indirect, others find compelling links between these ancient lands of purity and abundance. Regardless, these stories offer a glimpse into how ancient myths of life, paradise, and human origins shape the narratives that would become central to the Bible. Arthur and Elena George propose that many themes in the Eden story bear striking parallels to the Dilmun myth. They don't suggest that the writer of Genesis directly referenced these specific Dilmun myths, but rather that these archetypal themes were common throughout the ancient world. Like the mythical Dilmun, Eden is set upon a mountain. Genesis 2 even describes 4 rivers flowing from Eden, the Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates, which naturally originate in elevated regions. In Ezekiel 28, an earlier version of the Eden story refers to Eden as the garden on the holy mountain of God. Scholars Mario Coppa and Johanna C. de Moore argue it's plausible that Eden could be situated near the Ararat Mountains, where Noah's Ark came to rest. Even closer influences may be found in the Canaanite city of Ugarit, where sacred mountains and vineyards are mentioned in connection with El, the supreme Canaanite god. In both Mesopotamian and Canaanite cultures, sacred trees often symbolize divine order. Assyrian and Mesopotamian artifacts, for instance, depict sacred trees, often guarded by hybrid beings, symbolizing the divine realm. Ancient Canaanites also used trees in their religious rituals, and sacred trees were connected to the goddess Asherah, who was worshipped even in Judah, as suggested by archaeological findings. In Anatolia and Syria, the storm god Hadad was depicted with a tree, symbolizing his role as bringer of rain and fertility. Greek mythology also tells of a sacred garden, where the Hesperides tended a tree with golden fruit, guarded by a multi-headed serpent named Ladon. Ladon's name is similar to Lotan, the multi-headed sea serpent vanquished by Yahweh in Canaanite tradition, possibly influencing the concept of Leviathan. Scholars question whether the Yahwist writer was familiar with both the Canaanite and Greek garden myths, or if these cultures shared motifs from a common source. Unlike these goddess-centered myths, however, the Eden story centers on Yahweh, reflecting Israelite monotheism. Yet traces of earlier goddess-centered mythologies may persist, particularly in the sacred tree motifs. The god Ea, or Enki, cleverly persuades Adapa to decline an offer of immortality, keeping him as Ea's mortal servant on earth. When crafting the Genesis story, the Yahwist author brought together the idea of a sacred fruit-bearing tree and the notion that divine food could grant eternal life. Similarly, the tree of knowledge, from which Eve eats, mirrors Pandora's jar in Greek mythology. Like Eve, Pandora was the first woman created, and both brought calamity into the world by yielding to curiosity and engaging with forbidden objects. In a sense, the tree of knowledge functions as a different form of Pandora's jar. In Genesis, Yahweh Elohim formed the human from dust and breathed life into him. This concept of humans created from clay or dirt is widespread across the Mediterranean and Near Eastern myths. In the ancient Sumerian myth of Enki and Ninhursag, lesser gods weary of their labor ask for helpers. Enki instructs Ninhursag to mix clay with his blood to create humans. A similar tale appears in the Akkadian epic Atrahasis, where humans are made from clay mixed with the blood of a sacrificed god. Greek myths align too, as Prometheus is said to have formed men from clay, while Athena breathed life into them. Historian Jan Bremer notes these parallels in his work, Greek Religion and Culture, the Bible in the Ancient Near East. He suggests both Greeks and Hebrews may have drawn on shared ancient myths. In his article on Mythology Matters, historian George argues that the Eden serpent adapts the chaos dragon motif from West Semitic mythology, symbolizing the inner turmoil in Eve's heart. Yahweh's punishment of the serpent could reflect a version of the dragon-slaying theme seen in other cultures. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a well-known Babylonian text, also resembles elements of the Eden story. Gilgamesh reaches the paradise of Dilmun in search of immortality, only for a snake to steal a magical plant that grants eternal life. As the snake consumes the plant, it sheds its skin, reinforcing its association with immortality. These themes echo the story of Eden, where a serpent prevents humanity from gaining eternal life. Scholars Coppola and de Moore have traced possible links to two tablets from Ugarit, KT 100 and KT 17, that might shed new light on the origins of the Eden story. Although not widely accepted in academia yet, the tablets suggest a mythical background related to magic and the powerful role of serpents. In ancient Ugaritic texts, a mysterious goddess, known only as the daughter of Shapu and of the sky and deep, seeks help from the gods to save her land from a serpent's invasion. She appeals to various Canaanite deities, including Baal, Din, Anat, and Resheph, but none can destroy the serpent or expel its venom. Eventually, she turns to Horonu, a god of the underworld and chief of demons, often associated with serpents. Although feared and rarely worshipped at Ugarit, Horonu is said to wield power over demons and serpents, capable of both punishing and protecting people. Horonu responds by traveling to the Tigris River and uprooting a tree of death, which removes the serpent's venom and saves the sacred garden. Following this, A wedding ceremony takes place where Horonu gives the goddess serpents as part of her dowry. Scholars Mario Coppola and Johanna C. de Moor suggest Horonu might be responsible for the original serpent attack, a theory reinforced by the Ugaritic text, which implies that Horonu's help came to protect his offspring or legacy through the goddess. Others debate the role of the tree, whether it represents the tree of life corrupted by venom, or if Horonu used it as a magical tool to dispel the poison. A second Ugaritic tablet features a character named Adamu, who is attacked by a serpent in what seems to be a vineyard of the gods, possibly an ancient equivalent of the Garden of Eden. Adamu, potentially a divine figure, seeks aid against the serpent, drawing parallels to the biblical Adam in Eden. In this ancient myth, a god or goddess is again summoned to bind the serpent and dispel its poison. Scholars theorize that Adamu was intended to save the tree of life from the serpent, but the fragments leave Adamu's true role unclear. The presence of Adamu's name in this sacred vineyard with the serpent hints at fascinating connections between ancient myths and the Genesis story of Adam and Eden. The idea that the name Adam signifies soil or earth aligns with ancient earth goddesses, often linked to the underworld. Francesco Espe, a Semitic linguistics expert, suggests that the Hebrew term Adam, which also means soil or earth, may actually be a demythologized echo of the goddess Adamu. This pattern appears elsewhere in the Bible as well. For example, the Syro-Canaanite god Reshef's name is associated with plague and destruction. Even if scholars Corpel and Deore are incorrect in linking KTU 1.117 as a precursor to the Eden narrative, it's possible that the ancient earth deity Adama influenced the creation story, subtly embedded in the figure of Adam, whose name represents both man and soil in Hebrew. Earth Mother goddesses and the motif of forming humans from clay are recurring themes in Near Eastern creation myths. Eve, whose name means life, could correspond to maternal goddesses like Kubaba or Cybele, transformed into a human figure within the Eden story. For those raised within biblical or Christian theology, we tend to view the Eden narrative as a tale of human fallibility. However, a fresh look at Genesis chapters 2 and 3, setting aside these interpretations, reveals a surprising limitation attributed to the Creator, Yahweh. He creates a magnificent garden, but needs a caretaker, so he molds a creature from clay, bringing it to life with his breath. Yet Yahweh doesn't anticipate this creature's loneliness. To remedy this, he makes animals, but they don't fulfill the need. Only when Eve is created does Adam finally have a true companion. But Yahweh's challenges persist as a cunning serpent persuades Eve to taste the forbidden fruit, appealing to her natural curiosity. Eve's act, followed by Adam's, disrupts Yahweh's plan entirely, leading to their banishment. If Eden's story conveys anything, it may reflect the unpredictable nature of divine intentions and the limits of control, even for a god. Ancient myths also express this theme of divine struggle with primordial forces. In Ugaritic mythology, there is an account resembling Eden's. Scholar Del Almoliati interprets this myth as illustrating the independent power of magic at creation's dawn, beyond the god's control. Just as the Eden serpent defies Yahweh, in Ugaritic lore, only the underworld deity Horon possesses the magic to counteract a serpent's poison, a similar primordial chaos outside divine authority. The chaos serpent, Lotan, or Leviathan in the Bible, symbolizes an uncreated opposing force to the divine order, showing that such powers are beyond the direct will of deities. In Israelite tradition, the solution was to renounce magical practices rather than incorporate them as Ugaritic beliefs did. The presence of a two-power dynamic, a structured divine authority, alongside untamed primordial forces, remains evident in Near Eastern religious thought. This reflects a lasting recognition of chaotic forces independent of a single divine figure. The search for a direct Near Eastern origin to the Eden story remains incomplete. Though the theory that Ugaritic texts could have inspired Genesis is plausible, caution is necessary without more textual evidence. Nonetheless, elements like clay-formed humans, the tree of life, and serpents opposed to divine order were already prevalent in neighboring mythologies. Over time, the monotheistic approach required adaptation, yet ancient motifs persisted, subtly shaping the biblical stories we recognize today.